You've been there, right? You apply for a job, you've got your resume all polished up, and then bam, you get hit with a test. A test full of these really strange personal questions. Well, you are definitely not alone. So let's pull back the curtain on this secretive, multi-million-dollar industry that might just be the thing that decides whether or not you get your next job. Okay, just think about this question for a second. My soul sometimes leaves my body. True, false, or cannot say? Now, this is not a question from some late-night philosophy class. This is a real question from a widely used psychological test called the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, or MMPI, a test that's been used to screen people for jobs. Seriously. And as wild as that sounds, millions of people applying for jobs face questions just like this every single year, which, kind of begs one really big question. Why? What is going on here? To get to that answer, we really have to unpack what these tests are supposed to be doing, because this isn't just some random HR fad. No, it's a huge, systematic, and sometimes very strange attempt to build the perfect employee from a checklist. So if you look at it from the employer's side of the desk, the logic, well, it seems pretty solid. They're trying to create what they call a success profile for every job. They want to predict things like, is this person honest? Are they a team player? And in an age where you can get thousands of online applications for one job opening, it feels like a really efficient way to just filter through everybody. And, this is a big one for the company, it's seen as a way to lower their legal risk, to avoid a super costly, negligent hiring lawsuit down the road.
And with so many companies buying into this idea, it has become a massive business. But just how big are we talking? Well, let's take a look at the numbers.
The personality testing industry, it is now worth $500 million every year. Just think about that for a second. $500 million for an industry that pretty much operates completely behind the scenes of the hiring process. And it's not like it's slowing down. This industry is growing by about 10 to 15% every single year. That's a huge surge in demand from companies who are really starting to see these tests as an essential hiring tool. So what does all this explosive growth mean for you? The person actually applying for the job. It means that today, something like 60 to 70% of all potential employees in the US are taking one of these tests. And that's way up from just a few years ago when it was more like 30 or 40%. The odds have flipped. It's not that you might face one anymore, it's that you almost certainly will. But here's the thing, not all of these tests are the same. Not by a long shot. They actually fall into a few different categories and they have very different goals. So let's break down the two main ways that employers approach this. First up, you have two basic types of tests. On one side, you have objective tests. Think Myers-Briggs. They give you a limited set of answers like true-false or multiple choice. Super easy to score. Then you have projective tests, like the famous Rorschach inkblot test. What do you see here? These are way more ambiguous and they analyze your open-ended answers. Now, in hiring, you're almost always going to see the objective tests because, frankly, they're just faster and cheaper to use. But the most important difference, the one you really need to understand, is the goal of the test. Is it trying to screen in or screen out? A screen-in test, again like a Myers-Briggs, is looking for the good stuff, leadership skills, collaborative spirit. It's all about finding the superstars. But a screen-out test, like that MMPI we started with, is looking for red flags. It's trying to spot signs of instability or other problem behaviors. Its goal isn't to find the best candidate, it's to weed out the worst. Okay, so all of this leads us to the giant, flashing million-dollar question. With your career on the line, can't people just, lie? Can you just game the system and make yourself look like the perfect candidate? Well, the research basically confirms what we all kind of suspect. There's this phenomenon called impression management. And of course, when a great job is up for grabs, people are naturally going to give the answers they think the employer wants to hear, whether those answers are 100% true or not. So here's the really crucial point. Does this faking actually work? And if it does, what happens to the companies that are putting so much faith in these tests? Well, a big study from 2014 on pharmaceutical sales applicants gave us some pretty shocking answers. Researchers found that, faking was super common. But not only that, the people who faked it consistently scored higher on the tests, which meant they were more likely to get hired. But, and here's the wild twist, once they were on the job, those same people actually performed worse than their more honest colleagues. So the very tool that was designed to find the best employees was actually helping companies hire the worst ones. It's a complete paradox. So beyond just not working right, using the wrong kind of test can get a company into some serious legal hot water. There are really strict rules about what an employer can and cannot ask you before they actually offer you a job. The key piece of legislation here is the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA. And what it says is that an employer cannot force you to take a medical exam before a job offer is on the table. So the whole legal fight comes down to this one question. Does a personality test count as a medical exam? Well, according to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC, the answer is it depends. They've got a kind of checklist. They look at things like, is it interpreted by a healthcare professional? But the most important questions are these. Is the test itself designed to reveal a mental health condition? And is the employer using it for that purpose? If the answers are yes, then that test just crossed a very serious legal line. And listen, this is not just some hypothetical legal theory. Back in 2005, a company called Rent-A-Center was using the MMPI, the My Soul Leaves My Body test, to screen their own employees for promotions. The case went to court, and the ruling was a bombshell. The court said that because the MMPI can be used to diagnose mental illness, it legally counts as a medical exam. And using it before a job offer was a direct violation of the ADA. It was illegal, full stop. So where does all of this leave us? Well, it leaves both companies and job applicants stuck right in the middle of a really tough, practical, ethical, and legal mess. I mean, it's a genuine dilemma, right? On one hand, employers need efficient ways to sort through this sea of applicants. But on the other hand, those very tools can be inaccurate, they can be easily faked, and they can ask these deeply invasive questions. And when a company uses the wrong kind of test, they're not just risking a bad hire, they're risking a massive lawsuit. Which brings us to one final, really critical question. In this whole data-driven search for the perfect employee on paper, in this attempt to boil down all of human complexity to a simple score, are we maybe losing sight of the actual person,